Hi, everyone. I am here by my lonesome today. Whoop! I just dropped something. I'm sorry. It's been a bit of a crazy morning. How about for you? That happens in my life just like you. So just let me know that we're live and you're here, and that would be great. Welcome, Instagram friends. I hope that you are able to see us. We press the button and hopefully everything will work out well. When I'm by myself, I feel a little bit more uh, unsure of what's going on. So let me know we're live and we will get started. Today, we're talking about how do you say no to the guilt trip? Or how do you say no when someone's trying to give you a guilt trip? Or how do you say no when the guilt trip is, but I'm so disappointed. I'm so disappointed. So can everyone hear me? I hear it says we can hear you, or we can't hear you. So I just want to make sure you can hear. I assume you can since you're saying good morning. Welcome. I'm so glad you're here. And let me ask you a question. What or who gives you a guilt trip? What kind of things give you this guilt trip? I know that when I've asked different people in my life, especially women to men, like, do you feel guilty when you can't do this? Or when you feel guilty when you have to say no? My husband never says he feels guilty. He doesn't feel guilty for saying no. But most of the women that I talk to do feel guilty when they say no. And so what do you think that's about? What do you think that's about? What makes you feel that guilt when you say no? Whether it's no to your child, no to your spouse, no to your mother, no to your mother-in-law, no to your best friend. What triggers that guilt trip? I think it's really important for us to listen for that so we can figure out what's wrong. Because we can't ask everyone to stop making us feel so guilty, right? They're going to do what they do. We can't control what they do. But there's something that's going on in the external world or in our internal world that makes us feel guilty. Gail, everyone else is saying they can hear me. And so I think it might be your speakers. So look for your speakers and see what's going on there. Okay, I don't want to disappoint. I feel like I'm hurting them. Don't want people to be upset with me. Yes. Okay, you're right on track here. We want everyone to approve of what we do all of the time and to like us all of the time and never to be upset with us all of the time. And so we feel bad when we can't live up to that. We can't take care of us and also live up to what everyone else wants us to be and do, right? Is that fair to say that that's not possible? It's not possible. Jesus wasn't even able to do that, and he was perfect. He couldn't live up to what Peter wanted him to do. He couldn't live up to what Judas obviously wanted him to do. He only listened to the audience of one of what he was supposed to do. And because of that, he left people disappointed at times. Remember when the woman poured that expensive perfume on Jesus's feet, and the disciples were like, "What? What are you doing, Jesus? Why are you allowing this to happen? This is a whole year's wages that could be used to feed the poor." That is a really good argument for don't use this money in a stupid way. And what did Jesus say? Let her be. Let her be. She's doing something beautiful for me. Jesus didn't feel guilty. He didn't want the woman to feel guilty, but his own disciples disapproved of what he did. Here's another example. In Mark chapter 1, Jesus was at Peter's house after a long day of ministry. He was doing amazing things and ministering, and then he went to go to some R&R at Peter's house, and Peter's mother-in-law was upstairs and she was sick, and he went up and healed her, and then she came down and she made dinner. And it says the whole town gathered at the door because they knew Jesus was there, and Jesus was getting quite a reputation as a healer. And so they brought all the sick among them for Jesus to heal. And Jesus healed some of them. And then at some point he said, "No, I'm going to bed now. I'm tired." Isn't that selfish of Jesus? Read it for yourself in Mark chapter 1. Jesus goes to sleep, and it says early the next morning he wakes up. He goes to the desert to pray, be by himself with God. He clarifies, "God, what am I supposed to be doing? All these people are waiting for me to heal. I've got this to do, this to do, this to do, this. What am I supposed to be doing?" Peter comes and looks for Jesus and he says, Jesus, everybody's still back at the house waiting for you to come back and heal them. And Jesus says, not going back. I'm going to Jerusalem. That's to preach. That's why I'm here. Jesus recognized his limits and his capacity. I'm in a human body. I'm fully God and I'm also fully man. I'm in a human body and I have limited capacity. I need to eat. I need to rest. I need to sleep. I can't do everything. I can only do one thing at one time and be in one place at one time. So I can't be in Jerusalem and preach and be at your house and heal. Jesus didn't feel guilty for that. He accepted his human limitations and knew he had to make choices that would disappoint some people. How about you? Can you live with your limitations, or do you feel like you have to be everything to everyone so no one is ever upset or disappointed with you? Because I think that's where some of the guilt is coming from, huh? What do you think? Yeah, Tori said, my parents were guilt shame parents. After all I have done for you, you should what? What's the should? What's the should? Remember last time we talked about shame, and shame is self-hatred at my expense. Jim Kress says self-hatred at my expense. In other words, there is something fundamentally wrong or defective or ugly about me. Shame, I hate myself. Self-hatred, I hate myself that I'm not more perfect. I hate myself that I can't do it all. I hate myself that I can't make everyone happy all of the time. I hate myself because I'm 5 pounds overweight or whatever, you are, I'm getting older. Whatever we do as women, we often hate ourselves at our expense. We feel this shame. I'm inadequate. I'm not enough. I can't do enough. I can't be enough for you to love me like I want you to, right? Then guilt is, I should be better. I should. There's a should or a shouldn't in guilt. You've broken either your should, God's should, or someone else's should for you to feel guilty. So ask yourself, when you feel guilty, whose should am I breaking? Let me give you an example. So for the parent who is shaming you, thou shalt never disappoint your parents. Whose should is that? Thou shalt never say no to your parents. Whose should is that? That's your parents' should, right? And so if you say no to them, they're going to make you feel guilty, or they're going to try to. Maybe your husband has, thou shalt never say no to me, because a submissive wife would never say no. Thou should always have sex with me when I want it. Thou shalt always care about my needs before your needs. You see how guilt can come in there? When you break a should, you feel guilty. When you break a should, you feel guilty. But the only person's shoulds that you should really listen to are God's shoulds. The 10 Commandments are given to us as, hey, these are the rules that will help you live rightly. When you break them, you will feel guilty. God has hardwired that into your conscience. But we have allowed other people's shoulds to become God for us, to become law for us. And we can't even keep God's law. That's why Jesus came to die on the cross. We certainly can't keep everybody else's law. But do we need to even obey anybody else's law but God's? What do you think? What do you think? Jenny says, I don't say no because I cannot take rejection. Guess what, Jenny? Your answer is, I feel stomach pain and head pain when there's a long silent treatment. But now I just pop on an earbud and listen to something encouraging. So what I'm hearing you say, Jenny, is now you've learned to take rejection. You see, one of the things that we want to teach you in this challenge that we're doing in June, moving beyond insecurity, is to teach you not to be so helpless over these feelings, so helpless over other people's decisions. So if someone rejects me and I can't take it, well, then I'm going to do everything I can to not get rejected, right? Or if someone is upset with me and I can't handle that, then I'm going to do everything I can to make you not upset with me. Or if someone is angry and I can't handle someone else's anger because it makes me feel guilty or bad or shamed or anxious, and I don't know how to handle those emotions for myself, then I am going to bow into other people's wants, needs, demands, desires, because I don't know how to handle the kickback when I don't do what they want me to do all of the time. But here's the dilemma, because you're going to always feel this way because you've got more than one person in your life. So if you're helping your child and your husband's mad at you, then you've got that person. Or if you're helping your husband and your child's mad at you, you've got that person. Or you're helping your children and your mother's mad at you, your mother, you can't do it all. And so the solution isn't to keep bowing into everybody else's needs. It's to figure out, how do I handle the feelings of rejection or the other person's anger or disappointment when I say no? That's your work to do if you want to get healthy. Rejection isn't always a bad thing. Sometimes it's a gift. Sometimes it's a gift. Let me reframe it for you. When you get rejected by a job or a person, maybe that wasn't the right person for you. Maybe that wasn't the right job for you. Maybe it was a gift in disguise. It hurts a little bit, yes, because we want everyone to like us all the time, but Jesus didn't even have that. Can you accept that not everybody likes strawberry ice cream? Not everybody likes apples. Not everybody likes roses or sunflowers. And so that doesn't mean they're bad. It just means not everybody likes those. And it's okay. You don't have to change who you are so everyone will like you, because if you change who you are and you're no longer a sunflower, now you become a watermelon. Not everybody likes watermelon. Oh, then I need to become this. This is what we do as women. Instead of being who we are and understanding that we have to handle when someone doesn't like it, we try to do what they like so they will like us. Is that resonating? Is that resonating? Give me some feedback if this is resonating. Yeah. Jenny, I'd like you to stop saying I cannot take the rejection, because that's a mindset that's setting you up for not being able to do it. When it's sort of like when you say I can't do it. You can't. Like, oh, I can't do that. Then you don't. Right? But what if you said I can take rejection? It's unpleasant. It's sort of like taking icky medicine or taking chemo. It's unpleasant for sure, but you can take it. You can learn to take it. What if you said to yourself, instead of I can't handle this, I can learn to handle this. It will make me stronger to learn to handle this. I won't be so easily manipulated if I learn to handle rejection. So I think I've seen you on this Facebook Live a number of times. I would love for you to say something different to yourself. I know you're putting your earbuds in, but I can handle it. I will learn to handle it so that I get stronger and I am not like a wave tossed about by every person's no and rejection and bad luck and guilt trip. I'm not controlled by those things anymore. That would be amazing. Tiffany says, I am guilty of shooting myself out of some great opportunities. Yes, exactly. I'm glad you've got that insight. Listen to God's should. If I break their rules, they shame me, and shaming comes with sneering put downs. Okay, so you have two choices. When you break someone else's rules and they shame you, and shaming comes with sneering put downs, what did Jesus do? You think you're the Son of God? You're a demon-possessed guy. You think you're the Son of God? You're out of your mind. What did Jesus do when he got those shaming put-downs? In the book of Mark as well, later on in chapters 4 and 5, I think. He did nothing. He just put it in the back seat. He didn't believe it. He didn't take it into himself as that's true. People say all kinds of things, Jenny. People say all kinds of things to us. And we don't have to take it into our soul and think it's true. I mean, just listen to the politics today. Do you believe everything you're hearing? No, of course not. Why would you believe everything someone says about you? Are they God? Are they the ultimate truth teller of who you are and your life? No. Why are you giving them so much power to define who you are? People are going to think what they think. That doesn't make it true. Let me say that again. People are going to think what they're going to think. That doesn't make it true. If I read the negative comments that are said about me, I wouldn't be on Facebook Live. I wouldn't be out here teaching if I believed everything people said about me, right? It's just not true. And so this is your work to do, friend, to know who you are. And if you're guilty of something, own it. You're right. I did something wrong. I broke, not your should. That was my should. I shouldn't have lied. That's my should. Because if that's not your should, how many of you know a liar who has no should about lying and they don't feel guilty, right? You might tell them, how could you lie to me over and over again about this porn? How could you? And they don't feel guilty at all because they don't have an internal should about that, right? And so why would you take someone else's should as your should if it's not your should? If your parents say, you shall never disappoint me, and I say, hey, mom, I am sorry you're disappointed, but I got to live my life according to my values, not yours. And I wouldn't say that out loud, but I'm saying that to myself so that I don't get hooked into her should. Or even my kids. I'm so disappointed. Now, my kids have not said this, but other people's kids have. I'm so disappointed, mom. I was counting on you to watch my kids all summer so I could work. Or I was counting on you to watch my kids for 2 weeks so my husband and I could take a great vacation. I was counting on you to lend me money to go back to graduate school. And I'm counting on you to give me money to buy this new house. So that you should always do what I want, mom. And I hope if you're a mom my age, you have enough nerve to say, you know what? I think that's a great goal, but I can't help you with that because that's not my should. And you wouldn't again say it that way, but you have to say that to yourself. Otherwise, you're going to carry the guilt suitcases. I'm a bad mom. I'm selfish. I'm not generous. You be as generous as you want to be. When you're not being as generous as you want to be, the Bible calls it do not be a compulsive or a controlled giver. Don't give under coercion. Give because you are generous. If you're giving because you're being coerced to give by someone, or you don't want to feel their wrath or their disappointment, then that's not a free yes. That's a manipulated yes. And that's an unhealthy dynamic there that I'm here to try to help you get out of. Make sense? I'm going to propose a couple words for you, and I want you to interact with them. What's the difference between service? Like most women I know love to serve. They don't want to disappoint people. They want to make you happy. I don't want to disappoint you. I'm here. I'm here. And I love talking with you and helping you. But I'll probably disappoint some of you when I can't answer all of the questions, or I will have to leave at the top of the hour. I'm not guilty about that. I don't feel guilty about that. But I probably will disappoint some of you. I accept that as part of what I do. I can't do everything. I can only do what I can do. So I want you to write these two words. What's the difference between generously serving when you want to and give what you want to? So I'm going to give you my hour here and my wisdom and my help as much as I can this hour. What's the difference between service and servitude? Servitude. What's the difference between service and servitude? While you're thinking about that, I'm going to change the banner because we are having a challenge come up. And many of you have already registered. We have over a couple hundred women registered for this challenge, but we want to invite you to attend a challenge, a summer growth challenge called Moving Beyond Insecurity. Moving Beyond Insecurity. And we are going to do a 5-day challenge, June 10th through June 14th. So it'll be Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. We're going to take it off of Facebook. We're going to move it into Zoom so that you can actually talk back and forth with each other and with me and with one of my coaches. And every day we're going to do a live coaching session around a specific topic having to do with insecurity. So Monday, if you sign up, you will get at this time, noon Eastern time, we will do a Zoom live call on comparison and self-doubt, which leads to insecurity. If I'm not as good as her, I feel insecure. If I'm not as thin as her, I feel insecure. If I'm not as smart as her or as godly as this person, I feel insecure, right? Or if my husband starts watching porn, I feel insecure. So we compare and we self-doubt ourselves and we feel insecure. So Monday, we're going to talk all about that. Monday, you'll get an email with some tips. You'll get a video from one of our coaches about self-doubt and comparison. And then at noon Eastern time, we will gather together, not here, on Zoom, live, so you can interact with us and with one another. Tuesday, we're going to be talking about perfectionism. Same thing, noon Eastern time, we're going to get together live for a whole hour. Wednesday, we're going to be talking about shame and guilt. How do I get beyond that? How do I move beyond that so I don't feel so inferior all the time and insecure? And we're going to talk about that on Wednesday. The Facebook Live, the Zoom call will be at 3 p.m. Eastern time that day. And then Thursday and Friday go back to noon Eastern time. And we're going to be talking about Thursday, negative thoughts. Like, I can't, just like we talked about here. I can't do it. I'm so stupid. All those kind of negative thoughts that we have that lead to us feeling insecure. And last, people pleasing on Friday. So we hope you sign up. It's $17 for the whole package. You get all the emails, all the videos, all the Facebook and all the Zoom lives. If you can't attend live, we have a pretty strong structure around that for your privacy. So on Zoom, you have less privacy than you might have on other sites because people can see your name and all that, but you can certainly change your name on Zoom if you can do that. You know how to do that. And you don't have to put your camera on if you don't want to. Some of it will be teaching. Some of it will be role plays that you will watch between me and one of the coaches so that you don't have to actually interact. We'll role play how to say things, how to do things differently, how to think differently. And we will do some coaching for people who want to do that. The recordings of that coaching process will go into our private Facebook group that we will open just for this challenge for people who've joined the challenge. So those recordings will live in there for 30 days and then we will take them down. So if you want to watch the recordings and aren't able to attend live, you can do that for the next 30 days throughout the rest of June. All right, so that's enough information on that. What's the difference between service and servitude? Let me see what you have. Attitude in the spirit versus the flesh, Tori says. All right, there's joy in generous service, feeling trapped and used in servitude. That's really good. Ashley says, service acknowledges your own capacity. Servitude, you disregard your own capacity. Good, good. You can still sign up for Coaching Week, yes. Our no to something that's not our responsibility gives us the opportunity to say, yes, that's service. Servitude is you don't have a yes, you know. When you're a servant, you don't have a no. Right? One is free giving, serving. The other is coerced by demand or guilt. Service creates joy. Servitude weighs you down. I love this. What is the difference? Yes, good job, guys. Good job. Okay. Which would you rather be in? In generosity, in joy, in choice, or in guilt, resentment, oppression? No choice. As an image bearer of the Most High, one of the things that God has gifted you with, and if you want to get healthy, I'm going to give you 2 more words, and then I'm going to answer some of your questions. So we did 2 words, service and servitude. The next 2 words, I really want you to noodle these words because I'm going to be with you the rest of this week and we're going to talk about this. Freedom and responsibility. God has given you freedom to love him, to not love him, to obey him, to not obey him. Every human being, and actually a lot of animals too, like my dog says no to me. When I say come, she sometimes says no. One of the first developmental milestones of a child, if that child is healthy, is they look at you and they have this gleam in their eye and they say, no, and they turn around and run the other way. What does that mean? That means I'm not you, Mom. I'm not you. That is a huge developmental milestone when a child finally learns they're different than you. Because when a child is born, they think you and them are the same. That's why they don't get bothered at all if they keep you up all night, because they're up all night. You and he are the same. But once a child starts to mature, they ought to have their no. And they do. And they're proud of it. What happens to a woman when she doesn't have her no? She moves into servitude and unhealthy people pleasing and insecurity. because she's afraid to use her no, or she's never given her no. Maybe the parents who guilt trip you when you said that no, like, oh, you're not allowed to say no to me. Instead of saying, wow, you said no. Now, sometimes you have to correct that and child has to do it anyway. But the fact that they have it and they say it, and that sometimes as a parent you allow it and you even laugh at it, is a good thing, because a child's learning, I am me and you are you, and we are different, right? So freedom, you have to have the freedom to say no. If you don't feel that freedom, then that's what you need to work on. I need to learn to be free, not I need to keep bowing into everybody, because that's servitude. Servitude, and that's not what God's will is for you. He wants you to be of service by choice, not through slavery. Second, responsibility. Here's where we also miss the mark as Christian women. We're overly responsible. When you are mean to me, I'm taking responsibility for your feelings and trying to make them different so that I don't feel guilty or shame. I'm not responsible for your feelings. I'm not responsible for your thoughts. You have your thoughts, you have your feelings. They may impact me, so that if you shout at me or get angry at me or threaten me or hurt me, I'm responsible to take care of me and my safety and my mental health. I'm not responsible to change you and what you think and what you do. And so often we get unhealthy because we're not free to say no. Just like at the beginning of this talk, you guys are all, I can't say no because I'm afraid of rejection. I can't say no because I'm afraid I'm upset. You're not free to say no. And you're taking responsibility for their thoughts and their feelings instead of yours. And so, ladies, if you want to grow into a healthy, mature, adult woman, you must have your freedom to say no without guilt. You get that choice to say no. And yes, it will disappoint others. And you don't have to take responsibility for their feelings. You can be compassionate. The other day we talked about empathy. Okay, so let's say your mom or your daughter wants to borrow a lot of money to buy a new house or whatever. And you say, you know what, that's a great idea. I hope you guys do get a house or a vacation or whatever they want to do. But I'm not able to fund that. So that's my no. And they're, Mom, I can't believe you. You've got tons of money. Why you have all that money in the bank for retirement? Why won't you give us some of it? And to be able to say, I can understand from your age how that looks like a lot of money and how that looks like I should be able to be more generous. And at my age, I don't feel like I can do that right now, or that's a wise decision for me. So I'm sorry that you're disappointed, but my no is my no. You can show care and empathy for their disappointment without caving into it. Right? I remember when I've told my stepmom that we weren't coming home for Christmas. We lived in Pennsylvania and they lived in Chicago. And every year we took that long trek. And one year we got stuck on I-80 for 24 hours with 2 kids in the car and nothing to eat and nowhere to pee. And it was freezing cold. And I thought, I'm not doing this again. And so we decided we weren't going to drive home for Christmas anymore. It was just too risky and too long and too hard. And I wanted Christmas at my house for a while. And I told her, and she was very disappointed. And I said, I can understand. When I'm older, I'll be disappointed when my kids probably don't want to come and see me either. But Mom, we just can't. You can be empathetic for their disappointment without taking responsibility to fix it. I trusted that my stepmother could fix her disappointment, and she did. Right? We're going to be disappointed when someone tells us no. If I call my hairdresser and say, can I get in tomorrow? I don't like my haircut. And he says, no, I'm busy all week or I'm going out of town. I'm going to be disappointed. I'll get over it. Why can't we trust people to get over their own feelings? Why do we have to change our yes to no to yes in order for them not to feel their feelings? Or if they can't get over it and they continue to shame or blame or attack us, that gives us information, doesn't it? That I don't want to be friends with this person. This isn't really a friend. I'm being manipulated and used for what I can give them. And when I say no, they're not okay with that and they can't still care about me, then this isn't a friend. This is somebody I need to be more in an acquaintance mode or even a ministry mode if I want to give, but I can't count on them to care about me. This is information for you to be healthy. No, and which means freedom and responsibility. I take responsibility for me, not for you. And so if I'm anxious about not being able to say no, I better pay attention to that. Or if I'm anxious that you're upset with me, my job isn't to make you not upset. My job is to say, I need to learn to be okay with people being upset with me. What do I need to do that? And one of the things that you can do is take this course, Moving Beyond Insecurity, $17, 1 week, and it could save you 6 months of counseling one-on-one every day. All right. So just so you know, we are generous with our information, and we want you to have some skin in the game. That's why we're charging you $17. For me to pay my coaches to be there all week is going to cost me a whole lot more money than that. So I'm not making money on this challenge, but I want you to have some skin in the game. Please come. Please come if this resonates with you. All right, I'm going to answer some questions now. Is that all right with you? So let me move to the question tracker so I can see what questions have come in. And let me get my glasses on. What is it that after we're married and have children, we start carrying this guilt and shame of others? I was not like this before marriage. I was a little more selfish, to be honest, before marriage. Yeah, most of us are a little more selfish. And you know, the Bible tells us, do not merely think of your own interests in Philippians 2:2 and 3. Do not only think of your own interest, but also the interests of others. So I think part of maturity is balancing our interests against the interest of others, especially those closest to us. So I don't think that's a bad thing that you've gotten married and now you've got a husband and children to care about their interests as well. But I think as women, more than men, I think, I haven't, all the counseling I've done, all the work I've done with couples and men, I don't find that men, like, you know, I might feel guilty if I go to a women's retreat for the weekend. Oh, I'm guilty. My kids don't have me there with them. My husband would never feel guilty if he went on a hunting trip or he went on a fun trip for his friends for the weekend. He wouldn't feel guilty that he wasn't home. He would say, it's my time to go away and do something for me. And so I think those are just things that as moms or as wives, somehow we kind of marry into an idea of servitude, servitude, that we have to be there all the time for everyone. And actually, that's not healthy. It's not healthy for you, and it's actually not healthy for them because they grow overly dependent on you being there for them all of the time, and they don't learn what they need to do to not need you. In a previous Facebook Live, we talked about what a good mom is, and so I'm going to give you my short definition. A good mom is teaching your children not to need you at age appropriate levels, right? So around 2 years old, you're teaching your child not to need you to change your diaper anymore because they can learn to go potty on the toilet, but you're still helping them. All right. But 5, 6, 7 years old, you're not wiping their butt anymore. They're wiping their own butt. Right. And around 9, 10, 11, 12, you're not managing their shower time anymore. They're managing their shower time, right? You're teaching them not to need you. And so that is part of your goal. And so if you create this over dependence on mom figuring it out and thinking for me and solving all my problems and deciding for me, then they're not maturing in the ways that they need to mature to have freedom and responsibility. The two things that I left you with, those two words. And so I would just encourage you to kind of do some internal self-talk about this guilt trip that all moms have, that you do have that, and not to call self-care selfish. Right? That's the other mistake that you've made, is that we've called caring for ourselves. We didn't think about that as selfish as teenagers and young women because we were just caring for ourselves. But all of a sudden, because other people are in our life that we have to care for, we have to make choices. Is it okay for me to take a bubble bath when Charlie wants me to read him a story? Right? So now I got to decide, oh, that's selfish for me to sit in the tub for too long because he wants me to read him a story, when maybe daddy could read him the story, or maybe he could read himself the story that night, or maybe he could go without a story that night and it won't ruin his life. And I need a bubble bath and I need to chill for me tonight. Right? So I think those are the judgment calls that we have to make. When do I sacrifice me to minister to you? And when do I say no to you because I need to care for myself? And ladies, if I could give you one piece of advice, I'm a mom who's now past the momming years, and I'm grandmomming, and I'll be soon past that. It goes very fast. It's really important that you teach your children that you're not just a mom, because I think that when you just be the mom, you become an object. You're the servant, you're the giver, and you never get anything back, not even a thank you, not even appreciation. And you're not doing it for that. You're doing it out of love. That's what service does. You're not doing it to get something back. Love is service, freedom, giving generously. But relationships are reciprocal. And when your children don't care back about your needs, hey, mommy needs to be alone right now. Mommy needs to read her Bible right now. Mommy needs to go out with her girlfriend right now. If you never say those things to your children, they don't see you as a person. They just see you as an object, mommy, who is always supposed to help me. And that creates selfishness and self-centeredness in them, which ultimately will harm them in their future relationships. So the best thing that you can do is appropriate self-care, even when you have littles. Now, obviously, a baby, you're going to sacrifice what you need to because they can't think that way. But as children get older, even if you have a 2-year-old and you have a baby, you tell your 2-year-old, you have to wait. Mommy's taking care of this thing right now, baby, right? And so that's a good thing for children to learn. It's not all about them all the time. All right. What about I can't handle is horrible, degrading words. I don't want to say I can't. How to reframe that? And this question is connected. What about I can't handle their horrible gaslighting lying words? I don't want to say I can't. That servitude or sucking it up, putting up with it. How would you say to turn this into healthy? How do I turn it into I can in the midst of them gaslighting? Well, I'm not saying that you say it to endure forever. Like if someone's sticking me with needles, if they're poking me with needles, I'm not going to say, I can take this forever. That would be crazy, right? So I can handle someone's gaslighting me, meaning I'm not going to let that persuade me. I'm not going to let that trick me. I'm not going to let that confuse me. And I'm not going to let that derail me from the way I think. That's what it means to say, I can handle their gaslighting. It doesn't mean if someone's punching you in the nose, I can just sit here and handle it endlessly, right? It means, wow, they're punching me in the nose. I need to get up and get away from this person, right? But I can handle myself, meaning I can steward me. I'm not going to sit here being a willing victim of their gaslighting or of their abuse or of their deceit or whatever they're doing to me if I can help it. So if I'm not tied up or there's a gun to my head saying I can't do this safely, I'm going to get up and get out of here, right? And I can. And so many women who are good, godly women have somewhat of a victim mindset. And what I mean by victim mindset is I'm helpless and powerless over my own freedom to say no. I'm helpless and powerless over my own agency, which is the I can't. And so I would just challenge, you can learn to deal with gaslighting. So when you're watching the news and they're gaslighting you, what do? I look at a different channel, get more information if I want to know more about that subject. I look it up on the internet. I read lots of different perspectives on that situation so that I'm not being gaslit, which is confused by one person's point of view. I can do that. I can learn. I can get different perspectives. I don't just need to watch CNN or Fox News to find out what's going on. There are a whole lot of other people that can give me information that will help me make good choices. In the same way, your husband's gaslighting you. You can, depending on how safe you are, you can sit there and inside your head say, I don't believe a word he's saying. And I'm not letting his words twist me into a knot inside. And in about 5 minutes, I'm going to say to him, I've got to go to the bathroom, and I'm going to get up and go to the bathroom and lock the door. I'm going to put cold water on my face. I'm going to take some deep breaths. I'm going to pray and ask God and the Holy Spirit to give me clarity of thought. And I can do that. I can do that. So I'm sorry I'm making you mad by challenging your don't like I can, but I think you can do more than you think you can. All right. How do we navigate the accusations that we are bad wives? I think you have to learn to think for yourself and evaluate. All right. So you can only determine something's bad if you have the opposite definition of what's good. So his definition of a good wife might be very different than your definition of a good wife. Just like our kids might say, you're a bad mom, because we won't let them go to the party with no adults there. Right? So their definition of a good mom is, you just let me do what I want. Right? But your definition of a good mom is, I'm not letting you go to a party with no adult supervision. right? And you don't let their accusation, you're a bad mom, derail you, because your definitions are completely different about what's a good mom and what's not a good mom, right? Same with husbands. You're a bad wife. What's his definition of a good wife? And I don't know what your husband's definition of a good wife, but the people I work with often say your definition of a good wife is you do what I want, when I want, how I want, with no kickback. In other words, you don't have your no. You just comply with whatever I want and be happy about it. And if I'm mean to you, don't ever bring it up and come back and sleep with me with a smile. That's a good wife. But that may not be your definition of a good wife. And so, of course, you're going to fail. And you're in his mind, you are going to be a bad wife because you don't fit that definition. So the question you really have to live with, because the only person you live with the rest of your life is you. So it's really your definition of a good wife. The same with, for those of you who are dealing with aging parents, you might have parents who say, you're not a good daughter, meaning you don't spend all your time with me. You don't take care of me. You don't give me your money. You don't, let me live with you. So their definition of a good daughter is no boundaries. It may be that you're not going to do that, and you still are a really good daughter. I know I had to decide that with my mom, who, some of you know, was very abusive to me. And when she got cancer and she needed care, I made some definitions of what a good daughter would look like. Whether she thought it was a good daughter or not didn't matter to me. I had to live with myself and how I showed up while she was dying. And I decided how I was going to show up. Whether she thought that was enough or whether she thought that was good or bad, that wasn't the person I was doing it for. I was doing it for my conscience so that I knew that I was a good daughter in the relationship that we didn't have, but I was going to honor her the best I knew how to do while she was going through her crisis, without any expectations that she would approve or like it or agree or thank me or any of those kind of things. And so I think at the end of the day, you have to decide what a good wife is. And I think there are plenty of you who are good wives and you still have really awful marriages because you're not the Stepford wife. And maybe that's your husband's definition of a good wife, but that's not your definition. And if you have freedom and responsibility, you have the freedom to decide what kind of wife you are going to be before the Lord, because the person that you have to answer to for that ultimately is you and God. Your husband may not like it, and then that you're not the wife for him, right? And that makes it really clear. I don't want to be that kind of wife, right? I wouldn't want to be that kind of wife. And so that's why it's really important. We going back to our illustrations of apples and oranges and strawberries and watermelons and all that. If a husband wants chocolate ice cream, and that's the kind of wife he wants, and you think, oh, I'll try to be that, and I'm not chocolate ice cream, you're mint vanilla fudge or something else completely different, he's going to say, that's not good. That's not good ice cream. I don't like that ice cream. And maybe he doesn't. It's okay. You be you. Don't be what he wants you to be. He doesn't get to decide for you who you are. God made you to be who you are. Your responsibility is to grow into the best version of that, not what your husband says you should be. Right? And we've idolatrized marriage in such a way that we've allowed our husband to be our God. We've become God-centered or man-centered, husband-centered women instead of God-centered women. So I would just challenge you to think about what is a good wife, biblically and in your mind, and live up to that. And whatever your husband thinks, let him think. You can't control what he thinks. You're not responsible for what he thinks. Okay? I had an affair over 30 years ago. My husband back then wanted to stay together and work it out. We stayed together and I had to forgive myself, repent to God, which I did. I never did anything like that again. I always feel guilt over it, but I know God has forgiven me. Now, 30 plus years later, my husband throws it at me and reminds me that he can't trust me. This is so hurtful. It makes me feel guilty and shamed once again. Even though I never did anything since that one time, and all these years later, I believe this is just a manipulation strategy on his part. However, it brings back all the guilt for me once again. How should I respond to him? I've stated to him that I've been forgiven by God and I've proven my fruits, that I am trustworthy. So that last statement is really powerful. If you believe that, if you believe I am forgiven by God and I have proven by my fruits that I am trustworthy, why are you allowing yourself to feel condemned, shamed, and guilty anymore? I think of the Apostle Paul, and he was guilty of some stuff in his past too, right? I mean, he murdered people. He murdered Christians. And I'm sure that some people threw that up to him. Even some Christians who, said, "Hey, who do you think you are, Paul, saying this Christian stuff? You're a murderer," right? And he would admit, I was the worst of sinners, but I am forgiven and I am free of that. So it's not your husband's words that are hindering you for being free of that, because I see you said, "I am free. I am forgiven. I have proven by my fruits that I am trustworthy." So he's giving you a guilt trip or suitcases of a guilt trip, and you're taking them in for a season. And I'm saying you don't have to. However, you do have a problem. And the problem is in your marriage and with your husband. And so I would say to him, "Hey, it's been 30 years. And I think I've proven my trustworthiness to you. If that's not good enough for you, where do we go from here? Because I'm not willing to live with these accusations anymore." And then see what he says. So call him on the carpet for his shaming and guilt tripping you after you've proven yourself trustworthy. And then maybe he'll stop. If it works to manipulate you into compliance or into nervousness or, "Oh, I don't feel good," and so he can have more power over you, then it's working. So don't let it work anymore. Draw a line in the sand and say, "Hey, I think I've repented of that. I've proven myself. I thought I thought we had rebuilt trust. If that's not true, from what you're saying, that's not true. So I don't want to continue our marriage this way. What do you want to do?" Put it on him. Does he really want to get divorced? Is that what he's really saying? And he's using back stuff so that he doesn't have to own, "I don't want to be married anymore, not because of this, but just because I found someone else, but he doesn't want to tell you that." And so maybe there's something completely else going on. Maybe he's cheating and he's using this as an excuse to get out. But I would just call him on it. "This isn't okay that you continue to accuse me of this. And where do you want to go from here?" All right. So draw a boundary. It's not okay. I'm not willing to listen to this anymore because I'm not guilty. I'm forgiven. There is no condemnation for those who are in Christ Jesus. And then go from there. Now, I'm going to just backtrack for those of you who've been hurt by someone who's cheated on you and they haven't proven themselves trustworthy, right? They haven't done what this woman has done. It's not been 30 years. It's been 3 months. I think it's fine for you to feel uncertain and can't trust, and to be able to say, I need you to show me you're trustworthy. What would a person who's trustworthy look like to you? And is he doing that? Right? Okay. We have a few more minutes. What I'd like to do, we have 2 more questions, which I'll get to, but I would like you to kind of put in the chat. We've done this every session. What is your takeaway from today? What's your biggest takeaway from today? All right. I'd love to hear that. I think it's really important for you to kind of take a moment, take a deep breath, and ask the Lord, what do you want me to take from today about this whole idea of service, generous, joy, freedom, and servitude, oppression, coercion, over responsibility for something that's not mine to take responsibility for? Which do you want to live in? Do you have freedom in your life? Do you take responsibility for yourself, but not for everything and everyone else? You can't take responsibility for someone else's choices or their thoughts or their feelings. You can care about them, but you can't take responsibility for them. Right? So what was your takeaway from today? I'd love to see it. I'd love for you to take a moment and just write it down. Yeah. Let me see what you've written. What's your aha moment from today? Stacy says, "I love what you said about a good mother showing their kids that they're more than their mother, that they don't need her." Yeah. The Lord has been repeating, you don't have to take it in. Trust others to be responsible for their own feelings. Yeah. Yeah. I need to learn to be okay with people being upset with me. It's not my responsibility to make other people okay or how they respond. Responsibility, easy for me to call out or try helping others to distract myself from dealing with my own feelings. Yeah. Robin says, "I wish I had this info 37 years ago." Robin, there's an old saying that when the student is ready, the teacher will appear. So I just trust that. There's things I didn't learn back then either. And I'm still growing and healing too. So I don't think it's ever done. And I think sometimes in our younger years, we're just so busy trying to function, we can't even pay attention to the growth in the same way that we do later in life. Yeah. Take responsibility for myself and be more than just a mom to my kids. Learn to handle rejection. Become a God-centered woman, growing to be the woman God created me versus a husband-centered woman. Yeah, that I'm justified in withholding my trust until I see consistently changed fruits. I can hold space for my own feelings of disappointment and not take it out on the person who disappointed me. Yeah, it's completely okay to say no. Yes, so good. So good. Let me just read some on the Instagram. My takeaway is not reporting to anyone else but God. Be content with who God made you. Yeah, yeah. I think it's so freeing to ask the Lord, how am I to show up? I can only control my own side of the street. And I can show up in the best way and still things can go south, right? I can show up in the best way as a good mom, as a good grandma, as a good partner, as a good, boss at my company. I can do all that and things can go south. I'm not in control of everything or everyone. And there might be some people who are angry with me or disappointed with the decisions I make. And I have to answer to the Lord and I have to answer to myself for my decisions, but they may not make everyone else happy. And so I think I can live with that. But if you can't live with that, you are always going to live into the fear of man, which the Bible tells you is a snare. And we don't want that to happen to you. So let me get to the last two questions. If you haven't signed up for our challenge yet, I would highly encourage you to just go and look at it and check it out. It's called Moving Beyond Insecurity Coaching Week. It's June 10th through June 14th, Monday through Friday. And you go to Leslie Vernick, which is my name. All of you are here, so you know how to get there. leslievernick.com/summer growth. All one word, summer growth. You want some growth this summer? 1 week challenge? Do it. I'd love to see you there. All right, let me get to the last two questions. How do I get to freedom? How do I say no? And they're disappointed that is their thing. But how do I stop the feeling that comes after? I can't seem to feel confident. I feel bad, even though I understand this is in my head. You are going to feel bad. It's okay. Here's one thing I wanted to talk about really quickly in this last moment. There's a difference between feeling empathy because they are disappointed, right? So I feel empathy that you're disappointed, Mom, that I can't come home for Christmas. I do. I genuinely do feel disappointed. Or if my kids want to borrow money and I say, no, I can't. I feel disappointed that they're disappointed. I feel sad for them. I have empathy. That's not guilt. That's just empathy. All right. And it's a good thing that you have empathy. It doesn't mean you need to cave into it, but you can have compassion on someone without rescuing them from their troubles or feeling responsible or feeling guilty if you can't do for them what they want you to do. Right. So if your child is struggling with their schoolwork, you can feel compassion that algebra is a struggle, but I know algebra. You're the one who needs to learn algebra. You have to figure it out. Right? Or I don't know algebra. I can't even help you with algebra. Right? But sometimes kids do struggle with things. That's part of their learning, or husbands struggle with things, or you struggle with things, or moms and dads struggle with things. And we sort of have this culture. I don't want to struggle, so you need to help me and rescue me out of my struggle. But the struggle sometimes is what they need to grow and to get through their own limiting beliefs and blocks. And so when we just come in and fix it and rescue it, we're actually harming them. And if we can see that, we can feel compassion without feeling guilty. So that would be one thing. How do I stop the feeling? Maybe you will feel compassion and even sadness that they're not taking responsibility for themselves, right? So we've had some issues over the weekend that I feel very sad for someone who is going down the tubes and they're not doing anything to stop that. And I can't stop that for them. They have to stop that for them. But I feel a lot of sadness and a little anxiety about the outcome, not because it's my fault, but because of the damage that they will do to themselves in the process. But I don't feel guilty. So I think learning the difference between what guilt is and what just a little anxiety or sadness might feel like would be the first step for you. Even though I feel confident that the part that I played in all of that was one of generosity and kindness, right? And a little firmness. I had some boundaries, right? But overall, it was generosity and kindness with some good boundaries. But they still can make some bad decisions in all of that. And I am not responsible for their decisions. And so I'm a little anxious about their decisions. So I think that's part of it, is learning to discern the difference between guilty and just a little sadness or anxiety over the decisions that you see someone's going to make. I imagine Jesus felt a little of that when Judas went walking off and do what you're going to go do. But he didn't stop him. But I'm sure Jesus felt a little sad for Judas not guilty. Like, oh, I couldn't stop him. I'm a little sad for Judas and a little anxious about the next step he was going to take, right? And so I think understanding that and really working through those differences and understanding. And then when you feel that anxiety, what do you do to calm yourself down? So for me, I paint, I breathe, I talk to myself in positive ways, like this wasn't your responsibility, and I can pray. So take all your care, cast all your cares upon God. Be anxious for nothing, but in everything with prayer and supplication, let your requests be made known to God. So I pray for this person, right? Because God can intervene in ways that I possibly can't. And then I learn to let the outcome go. And those are all things that we'll talk on and moving beyond insecurity week. But those are things that you can learn to do to not get caught in I'm being responsible or overly responsible for them. You're going to feel some feelings. If you didn't feel anything and you just said, done, leave me alone and yeah, I'm fine, that wouldn't be so good either, right? So we are going to feel a little sadness or a little bit of a burden for a person's life without taking the responsibility for it, but not guilt. Okay, and there's a difference there. All right, I don't see any other questions here. The 2 questions was really 1 question. So I'm going to end early if there's no other questions, but I encourage you to sign up for the challenge. And if there are any questions specifically on the challenge, let me repeat the live component of the challenge and how it works. It's June 10th through June 14th, right before summer vacations, but maybe some of you are taking it in June, but it's only about an hour and a half time commitment a day for 5 days. And if you can't make the hour live Zoom call, you can watch the recording for 30 days afterwards. We are going to do in the morning, you're going to email first day, hey, what's self-doubt and comparison? How does that affect your feelings about yourself? How does that make you feel insecure when you're always comparing yourself to others? Well, then either you're superior, but most of us are inferior. I'm not as good as, I'm not as pretty as, I'm not as smart as, all of that. And we feel less than, right? And so how do we stop that? And how do we stop this self-doubt? Like, I don't know, I'm too stupid, I can't decide, I don't know my own mind. How do we stop that? How do we grow into more confidence? That will be day 1. You'll get an email with some tips, a video from one of our coaches with some exercises to practice, and then show up at noon Eastern time for our 1-hour live call, which we will have some more live application to that, as well as answer your questions on how did you apply this. The questions are only going to be taken on the topic that we're on. It's not on everything. It's on the self-doubt and comparison and how you get stuck in that and how we can help you move beyond that. Tuesday, we're going to be talking about perfectionism. Because if I'm going to have to be perfect all the time, I'm always going to feel insecure and inferior because I can never stay at perfect. Even if I did one thing perfect, I'm going to do 10 things imperfect. And so if I have to be perfect all the time, I'm always going to feel icky inside because I can't measure up. And so how do I move beyond perfectionism as a standard? And what's causing this drive in me to be perfect at everything and this anxiety that I'm not? And we'll have an email in the morning with a short video from the coach. We'll give you some exercises to practice. Then we'll come to our Facebook Live at noon and practice them and show you how to do them better if you get stuck in them, answer your questions around that. And then Wednesday, same process, email in the morning about shame and guilt and what to do about that when you're stuck in that, some exercise through a video. Come to Facebook Live at 3 p.m. Eastern time that day for an hour on Zoom. It's not Facebook Live, but Zoom. And then we'll have that chance to interact. Thursday, it will be around negative thinking, like, I can't, I'm too stupid, I can never do that, I'll never be able to. I used to think that way a lot. Many of you know, when I was in graduate school, I told myself, I can't write a dissertation. I'm not applying for PhD school. I could never write a dissertation. Guess what? I was wrong. I've written 7 books and lots of other articles and pamphlets and things like that. I can write. I just didn't believe I could write, right? There's a difference between not being capable and not knowing you're capable, right? And so, but I didn't go for my PhD because I believed a lie. What lies are you believing in your negative self-talk? I'm too stupid. I could never live alone. I can't support myself. Really? All right, really. Maybe there's some lies that make you feel insecure to make your own decisions and live your own life well because you believe some lies that are keeping you stuck. But we'll tackle that on Thursday. And then Friday, unhealthy people pleasing. We so want to serve. We so want to give. We want to make people happy. I do. I want to make you happy here. And it becomes a snare. So sign up for our Facebook Live. No, sign up for our Moving Beyond Challenge. And we have a Facebook Live tomorrow at the same time as today. And it's going to be about, let me just tell you what it's going to be. Oh, it is when saying yes comes at a cost. So it's the next step. What's the cost of saying yes too much? What's the cost for you? Come tomorrow and we'll talk about that. All right. We're going to go. Thanks so much for being with us today. Take care and we'll see you tomorrow. Bye-bye.